begin. Okay, so thanks for attending today's class. So today we'll be going through some of the essay skills. So usually like a lot of people, they go through their whole JC like not really knowing how to write essays. So maybe you've seen some like examples and then y'all try to like copy the examples and write, but then y'all don't really know why that's considered a good essay. It just looks good, but y'all don't really know why. Okay, so the purpose of today's class, right, is actually to equip you guys with the skills to write your own essays. And with these skills, right, you can actually use these skills to write your own essays and mark your own essays. Because when you write your own essays under a limited time period, usually it will become very messy. But then when you go back and mark it, then you can see how it can improve based on like this the ways that essays are actually graded at A-levels and stuff. They can have a good sensing of where does your essay stand. Okay, so wait, let me just adjust my computer. Okay. Okay, so how your essays are graded, okay? Your essays are graded in two main components. One of them is content and one of them is evaluation. So a lot of people ask me like, what's the difference between the 10 mark and 15 mark questions for essays? So they are mostly going to be the same. It's just that the extra 5 marks for 15 marks comes from evaluation, okay? So to see, there are going to be two components, content and evaluation. And basically for content, they will grade it and give you a mark. So you something your teacher writes like L1, L2, L3. Okay, so this L is indicating of where you stand in terms of content. And then for the 15 mark questions, then sometimes you see your teachers write E1, E2, E3. So it tells you where you stand in terms of evaluation. So for both content evaluation, you want to definitely score L3 and E3 is the highest mark. So how do we know whether it's a L3 or E3? So this is not really like taught in schools on like how this is graded, but this is through Cambridge examiners and stuff. When we see how the way they mark, then we can kind of like infer this. Okay, so for content, you want to aim for L3. So how it's graded is firstly, you're going to look at breadth and application. Okay, so how balanced or how big is the scope of the essay? Second is that for each of the points of your essay, how deeply is it written? How well is your analysis? Okay, so for breadth and application, for discursive essays, so essays that look at things like discuss, assess, all this. Okay, so usually your 15-mark questions, you need to have a two-sided argument. So two-sided arguments means you must have your thesis and your antithesis. Okay, and then the second point is you need to analyze the entire scope suggested by the question. Okay, so what does entire scope mean? Someone just joined. Okay, yeah. Okay, so what does the... Sorry, I can't tell if the people... Okay, yeah, just join. Okay, so what does entire scope means? So sometimes when you see in your question, right, they will have a few economic terms or a few premises that you need to look at. So maybe for example, maybe is inflation inflation is the most important like macroeconomic goal that government should pursue, like low inflation. Okay, so maybe that's the question. Then you want to see like, okay, inflation, okay, besides inflation, what are the other macro goals? So you need to cover all of the different types of macro goals. So that will be a scope. Okay, so usually for a L3, it means that every time there's a question, you must be able to unpack every single component of the question and answer the entire scope suggested by the question. And if let's say there's a preamble or context in the question, like for example, or Singapore has one of the lowest like inflation, or Singapore has been experiencing high inflation for the past few years. Okay, so you must take into account that scope. So if you got entire scope and preamble, that's how you get into the L3 component. Okay, so you need a minimum of 2 to 3 points in your analysis on your body. Okay, so for 10 marks, minimum 2, 15, minimum 3 marks. Okay, so even if it's you got a two-sided argument, everything is very balanced, you cover the entire scope, but you don't have enough points, you won't be able to hit L3. Okay, so first is breadth and application. Second, you want to look at depth. Okay, so depth, it means like for each of these like components in your scope, do you have the relevant economic theories? And let's say if you got the relevant economic theories, do you exemplify it using all these economic theories in terms of like, let's say diagrams, examples, or even numerical examples, okay, which we'll look at later. Okay, so you know how to get L3. So what I will assume that most of you guys, right, y'all will usually fall into L2. Okay, unless if you're very, very bad, you fall into L1. Like let's say you completely missed the question. But generally why people fall into L2 is first is you kind of do have some form of scope. Okay, you got sufficient scope, but maybe you're missing like 1 or 2 components in the question that is suggested in the question. Okay, so usually for everyone knows that discuss kind of questions will need some form of balance. So you do have some form of balance. So you try to have a thesis and antithesis, okay? Usually not just lacking in scope, you'll be lacking in depth, okay? So maybe in the essay, as long as you write anything that has some kind of like small conceptual error, it seems like you don't really understand what you're writing, you fall into L2, okay? Or maybe let's say you got a diagram, okay, or you get examples, but you in your explanation, you don't link your explanation to the diagrams very well, okay, or your examples are not very relevant. So like the examples, you don't really know what you're talking about, or you're unable to link like very technical economic terms to your examples, okay? So L1, it's very rare that I see students like that, but sometimes when students come for me, especially for one-to-one class, right, I do realize some students, it's like maybe their school never taught them properly how to write essays. So they write their essays in a very like GP. Okay, yeah, they write the essays in a very GP-ish style, journalistic way of writing. Okay, so usually if let's say you got like maybe like from D, okay, not D, maybe from E, S, U onwards, right? That kind of grades, right? Chances are it's because you fall into L3 and it's very likely that you got a journalistic GP-ish way of writing. Okay, so your econs essays are not meant to be like your GP or your English essays. I wonder if everyone can find the link because some of you guys are just joining now. Wait, let me just check. Okay. No one messaged me. Okay, yeah. So for those who missed the earlier part, okay, you can just take some time to go read this at home. So in general, this is we just went through content. So in content, you want to fall into L3. So L3, you need to have breadth and depth. Okay, but it's okay if you miss. Later, we will go through some examples. Okay, next, after you secure a 10 mark, okay, so for 10 mark essays, you don't need an evaluation. But for 15 mark, right, after you get your content, so your L1, L2, L3s, then this is when examiner will start looking for your evaluation points. Okay, so how do you get the highest evaluation points? Okay, so the first point is all, okay, all or most of the points of the body is sufficiently evaluated. So a lot of people will have the misconception, right? The evaluation happens at the very, very end of the essay. That's actually wrong, okay? Your evaluation is supposed to happen at the end of every point paragraph, okay? Every body paragraph. So later we'll go through and see how that works, okay? But after all these points you evaluate all of these individual points, then this is where everyone knows you need to have a final evaluation point. But what people tend to miss is the final evaluation point, right? You must directly answer the question. So you must have a very clear overall stance. So do you agree with the thesis more or do you agree with the antithesis more? And if so, why? Okay, so usually it's gonna be a summary of all the evaluative comments that you made throughout the paragraph. So among all the evaluation, which do you think is the most likely to happen? Or you try to weigh and see which one, maybe in the context of, let's say, the country or the economy, is likely that this will happen compared to this thing happening. Okay. Yep, or yeah, relative importance. Okay, so people tend to fall into E2 when firstly, only some of the points are sufficiently evaluated. So maybe in the whole body, you only slot in like 1-2 paragraphs of evaluation and then you have a final one. Okay, more importantly, this is quite critical. A lot of them, they don't know that in evaluation, you're supposed to make a very clear overall stance. So you must really answer the question. Do you agree with the question or do you disagree with the question? Okay. So if let's say you're rushing for exam and then in the whole paragraph, like in the whole essay, you don't really have a like you didn't really have time to evaluate anything or didn't write any evaluation, and then in the end you just slot in, oh, but then you think that you agree with the thesis more, or yeah, you think that inflation is, or you disagree, you say that inflation is not the most important macroeconomic goal. Yep. Then you don't you maybe write 1-2 lines, but you don't really substantiate. This is where you fall into E1. Okay, so E1, usually people fall into E1, right? Because firstly, they don't know that you're supposed to start evaluating in the body, and secondly, they don't have time. Okay. So this is how it's graded. So okay, yeah, so this is how it's graded. So yeah, as mentioned, yeah, in 15 marks, then you have to you'll look at the evaluation separately from the content, but for 10 mark questions, it'll be purely content. Okay, so this is how your paragraph, how your essay is supposed to be structured. So in 10 mark essays, you have an introduction. You have a point 1, point 2, point 3. Okay, we'll go through what PIL is later. And then you have a conclusion. Okay, so how long should your essay be? It should be around 1 to 1.5 pages, excluding your diagrams. Okay, so just words purely 1 to 1.5 pages. Okay, but for 15 mark, Then you can see what I mean by having the evaluation littered through your paragraph. Okay, sorry, like if let's say it's very busy, can you, yeah. Okay, so for 15 mark, you have introduction, point 1, and then you want to evaluate point 1. Then you have point 2, and then you evaluate point 2, and then you have point 3, evaluate point 3, okay? Then instead of having a conclusion like your 10 mark question, your conclusion will kind of be a final evaluation. So you tell me, you answer the question directly. So do you agree with the thesis more or the antithesis more? Okay. Okay, so whenever, let's say you see a question like that in the exam, okay, this is where everyone starts panicking. So how do you dissect the question? So whenever you write any essays, right, you need to really ask yourself, what is the examiner trying to ask, okay? What is the scope of the question? What is the depth of the question, okay? What is the requirements of the question? So how do you dissect a question? There are 3 things you must do. It's called the 3 C's, okay? One of them, you look for the command word. Okay, so the command word will be, in this case, the explain word, okay? So explain will tell you, okay, is it gonna be a descriptive essay? So describe is gonna be very simple. You just need to describe point 1, point 2, point 3, okay? Or this discursive essay, so is it things like assess, evaluate? They need a thesis and antithesis. Okay, secondly, is you need to identify what's the scope of question, right? So you must look at concept. Okay, so in this concept, what are all of the concepts that you must cover based on the question? Okay, this is a very simple question. Okay, so you know it's just the problem of scarcity. Okay, so this is your command word, this is your concept. But in some questions, you have like multiple concepts that you need to cover. Okay, last one is context. Okay, context is rare for 10 mark questions, but later you'll see 10 mark questions. Usually you have a preamble. Preamble is the part before the question, okay? The one who tells you like, oh, the economy is going through the crisis, blah, 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 blah. Or this country has this problem. That's your preamble, okay? Or sometimes they will tell you what country's economy we are looking at. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so let's go through, okay, what is command? Okay, command is going to help you determine the structure of your essay. Okay, so for example, let's say if you know that it's going to be things like describe. Okay, describe is something like 10 mark question, right? Then as you know, as we see earlier, you know it's going to be an introduction, P1. Okay, later we'll go through what P is, but for now you can just take it as point. Okay, point 1, point 2. Okay, and if you have time, point 3, okay, give us 10 mark question, right? Then you have a final conclusion. Okay, but if you know that it's something like discuss, okay, then let's say usually 15 mark question, then you know you got to have introduction, point 1, and then you evaluate. Okay, so PE. Okay, then you have a second point, Q. Okay, Q1, so Q2, and then you evaluate point 2. Okay, and then you have your third one, and then you evaluate point 3, and then you finally have a conclusion, and you know that conclusion will be kind of like evaluation. Okay, so this is how you determine the structure. Okay, so what are the common ones? Explain, as mentioned already, explain has some kind of cause and effect. So you want to talk about how one effect will lead to another. Okay, but not always. But sometimes, unless usually we think about like macroeconomic policies or these, then explain will be a very strong cause and effect kind of thing. Okay, but if you see here in this question, okay, explain economic problem or scarcity, there is a very, very strong implication of cause and effect. Okay, you gotta see that the type of question. Okay, this one is a bit rarer. You don't really see it often. Okay, compare and distinguish. So when you look at compare, your point, right, will be the first similarity, second similarity, and then the third one will be a difference. Okay, and you need to compare one yardstick at a time. What it means is every single paragraph should talk about either one similarity, one difference, or one similarity or one difference. Okay, you don't mix points together. Okay, but for distinguish, right, distinguish tends to imply that there's more differences. Okay, so for compare, maybe you have the freedom, you want to write one similarity, two differences, or two similarity, one difference. Okay, but for distinguish, you need to write one similarity and two differences because there's a stronger emphasis on differences. Okay, the third one is mentioned, discuss, assess, evaluate. Okay, so discuss, assess, evaluate is gonna be you need a very balanced kind of essay. So you need a thesis, antithesis, and you must take a stand. Okay, so some of the ways this can be tested is you want to think about pros and cons of a macroeconomic policy, for example, pros and cons of let's say having a monopoly type of market structure. Okay, so and then you can also talk about positive or negative consequences of a decision, especially when it comes to like policy. Okay, so in summary, the 3 types of essay, this is how you want to write it. Okay, so for describe, it's just point. For distinguish, it can be of either a 10 or 15 mark question, depending, but usually it's gonna be 10 mark question. To have 10 mark, it will also be the same as describe, just that your points will be similarity, difference. Okay, discuss, assess, evaluate. It's gonna be thesis, antithesis, and antithesis, or it can be thesis, antithesis. Okay, if you don't know what thesis, antithesis is, it just means that you agree with the question, you disagree with the question, and you disagree with the question. Okay. Yeah. So next is content. Okay, so content, you need to look at it will determine the economic frameworks of your essay. So you must look at what are the key economic terms within the question, or sometimes it's not going to be very explicit. What is economic concepts being tested? Some questions are a bit like harder to understand. So maybe let's say they say that the price, tell me what are the factors that can influence the price, okay, of this good. Okay, or the price of this good has risen dramatically. Tell me what are the factors that could contribute to it. Okay, so if you think about price, price itself is not a very strong economic concept, but what is the idea behind price? It's going to be demand and supply. Okay, so you need to look at the question, unpack what are the key economic terms they are trying to address within the question. Okay, so yeah, this one will tell you what the economic frameworks. Okay, so you need to be able to define all of the key economic terminologies in your essay. So for example, let's say price, right? Then you know that they're going to test on demand factors and supply factors. Then you need to define what is demand, willingness and ability for consumers to buy. Okay, then what is supply? Okay, willingness, ability for producers to produce. Okay, then of course the whole during a time period, ceteris paribus, all that. Okay, yeah. Then whenever you look at, okay, all these are the economic concepts being tested, then you ask yourself, okay, what are the diagrams that you can draw to illustrate a certain economic point, okay? So yeah, you must always try to think about how you can draw diagrams in order to hit your L3, okay? And sometimes it may not be diagrams. For some questions, you can use numerical examples, but it's rare, okay? Or you can think about like examples, etc. Last one is context. Context doesn't occur in every single essay. Usually occurs of 15 mark essays, okay? So a lot of people, when they see context, they don't like it. But actually context is very good for exam. Why? Because context, right, will tell you the parameters of your essay. So let's say demand and supply factor, right? The essay is going to be very free. So you can write any demand, any supply factor. But if let's say the question got tell you explicitly that this is happening in the economy maybe the government placed a certain policy. That's why there's a change in demand and supply. Then you know that that would be a point that you must put into your essay. Okay, so what I like having context, right, is because it's very hard to write out of point. Usually when you don't have a context, right, that's when you're very free, you can write in anything you can think about, right? But then that's where people tend to drift away from the question and then they start writing it very like GP, very journalistic style, or they miss the essay point completely. Okay, so usually you can find the parameters in your question or preamble. Another good thing about your parameters is it's very good for your evaluation points. So some of the parameters will be, for example, in a certain country, like in Singapore, okay? Then in your evaluation, then you can say that in the context of Singapore, this is likely to happen or this is unlikely to happen. Okay, so it's very good for evaluation points. Okay, let's go through some examples, okay, using the 3 C's. Okay, so first, let's say, explain the economic problem of scarcity. Okay, so what's the command word gonna be? You all can answer if you want. And you pop the chat. So you all got a question, you all can leave in the chat. Okay, so what is the command word? Anyone? Okay, EX, explain. Okay, explain. So remember, based on explain alone, right, you know how your structure is gonna be like. Okay, all this is gonna happen in your head. Exam, you don't have time to write everything out, but it's very good to practice it when you're writing by yourself at home, so that in exam it will come very intuitive to you. Okay, you know you got your intro, you got your P1, okay, or point 1, point 2, point 3, and your conclusion. Sorry, right, wrong. Okay, so this is gonna be your command word. Okay, next, what is gonna be your concept? Concept is a scarcity, right? Okay, so in your scarcity, you need to have your definition. Okay, so what's the problem of scarcity. Okay, y'all may not remember because it's been a while. Okay, so it's the concept of unlimited wants, limited resources. Okay, hence a choice must be made of who to produce for, what and how to produce. Okay, and maybe what and how how to produce. Okay, so who, what, and how to produce and how much to produce. Okay, and hence the opportunity cost is incurred. Okay, so you know that this is gonna be your definition. So based on this, then you see, is there okay, then the last one is gonna be your context. In this question, there's no context. Okay, so you just need these two. Okay, then you know that, okay, how can I frame my point 1, point 2, point 3? You look at the concept that's being tested. Okay, so maybe unlimited wants and limited resources can be your first point. Okay, a choice must be made can be your second paragraph. Okay, and then your opportunity cost is incurred can be your third one. Okay, and then you ask yourself, okay, so now the essay is going to seem very thin, right? Because there's not much to write about. Then you want to think, can you have any diagrams or any examples that you want to put in here? Okay, so diagrams, you all know that when it comes to scarcity, you like to use PPC curve. Okay, I won't go through the content today because this is our essay class, but yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can find me after class and explain to you, okay? So PPC curve example, okay? So maybe you want to say, like you can illustrate using PPC curve. So maybe you say that a country has 2 goods, etc., blah, 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 okay? Yeah, or you can even use a personal anecdote for, to illustrate the concept of scarcity, can also. Okay, as long as it's very economic concept based and it's not GP-ish. So this is how you analyze the question. Okay, any questions? No? All good? Okay, yeah. Because I like to see your faces so I can read your expressions, but okay, yeah. Okay, example 2, next. Discuss whether economic growth can solve the problem of scarcity. Okay, so what's a command word? Okay, it's going to be discuss. Okay, so as mentioned, you know that discuss, right? You need to have intro, Pew 1, evaluate the first point. Pew 2, evaluate the second point. Pew 3, evaluate the third point. And then you have a conclusion. And you know that conclusion must be evaluative. Okay, so take note that if when we talk about evaluating every single point, right? If you are time pressed, you don't need to evaluate every single point, but you must evaluate most points to get E3. Okay. So next, then you want to look at concept. So unlike the first question, very simple, right? You realize that there's 2 concepts here. One is the idea of economic growth, and one of them is the problem of scarcity. Okay, so just like just now, problem scarcity, I won't go through again because you all know what it is already. Okay, but you need to break down for me what is economic growth. Okay, economic growth, you know that there are going to be 2 kinds of growth: actual growth, potential growth. Okay, then scarcity, you know that it's the unlimited one, limited resources, choice has been made, blah blah blah. Okay, so yeah, so how do you plan this? Okay, so when you see discuss, right, you know that it's not just going to be point 1 evaluation, point 1 evaluation 2, point 3 evaluation 3. You know that you need to have a thesis, okay, an antithesis, or you can write thesis again, and then you have a antithesis, and then you have a evaluation point. Okay, your final conclusion. So what are your thesis, antithesis, and thesis and antithesis? So you can think of it as you agree with the question, and then you don't agree with the question. Then you have the final conclusion evaluation. So the final conclusion evaluation, you need to answer the question directly. So the question is, discuss whether economic growth can solve. So your final conclusion must be cannot solve. Okay, but this one, there's a clear answer. Okay, in some essays, you cannot, whether you say can solve or cannot solve, it doesn't matter as long as you justify. But for this, you know that problem of scarcity is something that can never be solved in any economy. Okay, so your conclusion, you need to answer and say that at the end of the day, economic growth can never be solved. Okay, so how are your thesis, antithesis gonna look like? Okay, so thesis means you agree, right? Okay, but you remember scarcity cannot be solved. So how do you kind of agree with the question? You can say economic growth, okay, in terms of maybe you can say actual growth. Okay, remember you must cover scope. So you must cover both actual and potential. So you can maybe first one you can say actual growth can alleviate, okay, the problem of scarcity. That's gonna be your first thesis. Okay. As to why, as to how, I won't go through lah, because now we're just gonna talk about structure. Okay. Second, the thesis, maybe you can say potential growth. Okay, we must cover scope, so we must talk about both types of growth. Okay, can alleviate the problem of scarcity. Okay, so how your antithesis will be? Okay, so a lot of people think that the antithesis you gotta say that, oh, but it cannot solve. Okay, but actually remember that's how gonna be an evaluative comment. So what you want to say is maybe you can say, but okay, maybe economic growth in general, whether it's actual or potential, okay, can worsen the problem of scarcity. Okay, then you have a final evaluation point. Okay, end of the day, okay, you don't literally say end of the day in the essay lah, but you can say that in conclusion, okay, problem of scarcity can never be solved. Okay, but you must tell me why lah, okay? And then you maybe you need to have a new insight. So say that maybe government, that's why government policies are very important in order to make sure that like the growth can help to alleviate the problem of scarcity instead of worsening it, something like that. Okay. Any questions? Understand, right? Thesis, antithesis. Okay, how do you evaluate for every paragraph? Is it one sentence? Okay, so how do you evaluate for every paragraph, right? Usually evaluating for every paragraph becomes very important when you have a preamble or when you got like a context. Okay, in this way you don't have context, so evaluating in every paragraph not very important. But how you want to evaluate every paragraph, right? You look at this, okay? So they say that actual growth can alleviate the problem of scarcity. Okay, then you want to say, but what are the limitations of actual growth? Growth in doing so. Okay, then you can say the same thing, but what are the limitations? Okay, there are a lot of ways to evaluate. Okay, then yeah, then the third one you can say, okay, but it wasn't the problem of scarcity. Okay, you say, but not in every economy, but depends on the type of economy. Okay, but definitely that's not all you need to say. Okay, you need to say more than one sentence lah. Okay, so maybe you can say like, oh, okay, so one of the reasons why it can worsen, okay, why economic growth, right, can worsen scarcity is because remember scarcity, right? You're thinking about how much to produce, who to produce for. Okay, so in economies that have very high income inequality, okay, when you have economic growth, who's gonna determine how much and who to produce for? Okay, what to produce. Okay, it's gonna be by effective demand, which is the willingness, ability for people to buy, right? Okay, so some economies, right, when you have economic growth, it worsens the income inequality. Okay, so it wasn't a problem of scarcity. Why? Is because people end up producing goods for the rich, okay, while the poor don't really get the goods that they actually need. So it could worsen the problem of scarcity, especially for the poor in economies with high income inequality. Okay, so it depends on, so why does it depend on the type of economy? Okay, so for some economies that have high growth, okay, so maybe got very high growth and got large income quality, like for example, let's say China, this will become a significant problem, okay? But you think about some countries, maybe in Singapore, this unlikely to happen as much, although Singapore got income quality, is because we got high social security. So it means that the government has a lot of policies in place to make sure that the poor still gets the need that, to determine like, still gets the effective demand by helping them, okay? So that's kind of how you evaluate. You understand? Okay. So at the end of every paragraph, you need to have just a short evaluation. Okay, then the final one is end of the day, scarcity can never be solved. That's why you need government policies, something like that. Okay. Okay, I'll move on. Okay. So example 3, the price of sugar, an ingredient in many canned soft drinks, dropped dramatically by 32% in the recent years. Healthy living campaigns by the government also meant that consumers became more aware of the possible health dangers of consuming too much sugar. Explain the factors that determine the price of soft drinks in the market. Okay, so this one, you know that there's going to be a preamble, okay, but we'll go through the whole thing. Explain. Okay, so explain, remember, it means that you need to have intro, point P1, P2, P3. Okay, and conclusion. Wait, you give me a sec. I got on my aircon very hot. Okay, I'm back. Yeah. Okay. So this is explain. Okay. Then next you must look at what other concepts that are being tested. Okay. So you can see concepts, there's factors. Okay. They determine the price of cans of drinks. Okay. So remember just now I got mentioned earlier, I got give you a hint already. When you talk about price, what is the economic concepts that are being tested? Factors of what and what? Anyone? Anyone? Factors of what? What determines price? Yeah, okay, very good. Demand and supply. Okay, so you know that the economic concept they're looking at is the demand factors and supply factors. Okay, and then price of cans of, yeah, during demand, supply, cut, blah, blah, blah. Then equilibrium point is going to give you your price of cans of drinks. Okay, last one, context. Okay, so what's the context? Context is seen in the preamble. Okay, so usually in an essay like that, if let's say without this point, okay, so without this, right, you can write any demand and any supply factors, okay, but remember your context is gonna tell you what is the parameters of your essay, so your essay is gonna be limited. Okay, I like it because like personally I like to be told what to do lah. Okay, so if you see the preamble, that's where you can identify the demand supply factor, so you cannot just anyhow write. Okay, you must look at what's in the preamble. Okay, so let's look at what's in the preamble. Price of sugar, ingredient in many soft drinks, dropped dramatically by 32%. Okay, so you know that this is a demand and supply factor. Y'all remember? I think maybe y'all forget everything. Everything give back to teacher. Okay, demand. Is it? Okay, so remember we are looking at the price of canned soft drinks, right? Okay, so sugar, how is sugar related to canned soft drinks? It's a factor input, right? Okay, you need sugar to create canned soft drinks, right? Okay, so it's actually a supply factor. Okay, so price of sugar is a supply factor. Why? It's because what is supply factor? You know that when there's a rise in price of sugar, it means that there's a rise in the production cost or cost of production of cans of drink. Okay, and hence this will lead to a fall in supply. If forget, never mind. Okay, we'll just go through how to analyze the question. So y'all can spend the next 7 months revising. Okay, so yeah. Okay, then next one. Healthy living campaigns by the government also meant that consumers become more aware of the possible health dangers. Okay, so they are aware of the possible health dangers. So this is a what factor? I didn't got to be demand factor. Okay, yes, very good. This is a demand factor. Okay, so take note that, okay, this is just a side note, nothing to do with the way you frame your essay. It's just that when you look at demand supply, right, factors, you must always link to what is the actual demand supply factor. Okay, so instead of just saying, oh, because consumers are more aware of their possible health dangers, hence they the demand for cans of drinks will fall. Okay, there's a missing component which your economic your economic terminology. So it's actually an influence on your taste and preferences. Okay, hence a fall in demand. Okay, so you know that therefore you got your one demand factor, one supply factor. Okay, then based on this, then how you gonna determine the price of cans of drink? Okay, then maybe your third point, you can say that is demand stronger than supply, or is supply stronger than demand? Okay, or you can bring in elasticity. Okay, to determine the price of a can of drink. Can also. Okay. Yeah, so these are gonna be your 3 points, and then you just need to conclude. Okay, so how to conclude for 10 mark, right? Unlike evaluation for 15 mark, conclusion for 10 mark is just a summary of points, just summarize. Hence, blah, 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 blah will cause a overall increase in price of cans of drinks. Or increase or decrease, a fall, okay, doesn't matter. Okay. Yeah. Why does elasticity affect influence, right? This is quite an important concept. So if you don't know, also can ask me after class, okay? I won't go through. Okay, last example. In 2015, Singapore GDP at, wait, none of you are J1s, right? No, right? Okay. Because I got invite like people from like the other economic class. Okay, I don't think any of you are J1s. But J1s, if you're confused about this question, just ignore, okay? Because you haven't learned yet. Okay. So the question is, in 2015, Singapore's GDP at 2010 prices grew by 2%, total population grew by 1.2%, inflation was 0.5%, unemployment stood by 1.9%. Discuss how far the government can use these statistics to conclude if there's an improvement in the standard of living in Singapore. Okay, so practice the same thing. Command word discuss. So I won't write again. Okay, maybe I should write lah. Okay, just intro, P1 evaluation. Okay, but the P you know is gonna be a thesis. Okay, P2 evaluation. Okay, can be thesis or antithesis. Okay, for me I like to write two theses like easier for me. Okay, P3 evaluation, antithesis. Okay, last one evaluation or conclusion. Okay, so you know the structure's gonna look like that. Okay, how far the government can use this statistic to conclude if there's an improvement in standard of living. So what is the concept? It's gonna be standard of living. Okay, so remember when we got any concept, right, you must break down the concept. Okay, so what is the standard of living concept? Okay, there are gonna be two kinds of standard of living. It'll be material standard of living, okay, and non-material standard of living. Okay, then you can also see that then next is you need to look at context. Okay, so if you see the question, they got talk about statistics, right? So what's the context here? Okay, GDP, in 2015, Singapore GDP at 2010 prices. Okay, what does at 2010 prices mean? It means it's real GDP. Okay, so you know real GDP has grown. Okay, population has grown by 1.2. So this can tell you real GDP per capita. Okay, inflation has grown 0.5. Okay, so and then unemployment. Okay, so you realize that all these are going to be your points. Okay, so what are the first thesis? Okay, it's going to tell me, okay, first the first thesis, it'll tell me that the statistics are sufficient. Okay, then you want balance, right? So you tell me sufficient in telling me about material standard of living. Okay, so maybe the first statistic you want to talk about, maybe GDP per capita. Okay, because you need to contextualize. Okay, second point, you tell me the statistics are sufficient also. In what? In material standard of living or even non-material, it's up to you. Okay, because how you can, so material, if let's say you talk about unemployment, right? Material, you can say is sufficient telling me something about material because unemployment influence the income, purchasing power, and hence material standard of living. But you can also say that unemployment is sufficient for telling me non-material because higher unemployment means people are more stressed about looking for a job, higher crime rates in the country. Okay, so that's non-material. So it's up to you whether you want to say material or non-material standard of living. Okay, then your antithesis is statistics are insufficient in telling me, okay, so you want scope, right? So in this case, you must say non-material standard of living. If you have not mentioned non-material standard of living, okay, then you bring me other statistics, okay? So how to write evaluation for this? Okay, remember you got all your E's, right? I've been negative evaluation a bit. Okay, you see got all E's. Okay, so remember you must evaluate every single point, okay? So you can say GDP per capita is sufficient in telling me about material standard of living. Then you tell me, okay, but what are the limitations of GDP per capita? Okay, so your thesis will be GDP per capita is sufficient in telling me about material standard of living. Okay, so why material standard of living is because GDP per capita is a good indicator of the income of the people in the country. Wait, then for thesis, if I do one for material, does it matter if I don't? No. Okay, so okay, I'll go through what's the difference. Okay, so GDP per capita. Okay, I'm telling you that okay, so let me finish the GDP per capita. Okay, so GDP per capita, why is it sufficient in telling me material standard of living? Because it's an indicator of income and purchasing power. Okay, hence it can tell me something about material standard of living. Okay, but then your evaluation is you must go and evaluate this statistic. Okay, so GDP per capita, right? But it's not a good indicator. Okay, it may not be a very good indicator of income and hence material standard of living because it doesn't tell me anything about income inequality. Okay, because why GDP per capita, it only takes the per capita, right? It doesn't tell me what is the breakdown. So maybe the high GDP per capita growth could be due to the growth in the income of the wealthy, but the poor doesn't experience the same type of economic growth. Okay, so you're telling me the limitation of GDP per capita. Okay, and that's the end of the evaluation. Just one line is enough. Okay, it's not a whole paragraph. It just evaluate that single point. Okay, so the second one, let's say what statistic next? Okay, so maybe you can tell me unemployment. Okay, let's say we bring in unemployment. Then you can say unemployment, tell me, because high unemployment means that people are losing their income, so fall in income, fall purchasing power, blah, 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 blah. Then you can also tell me, oh, but your evaluation point is you can tell me that, oh, but let's say unemployment is maybe not exactly a good indicator. So what is unemployed? Not a good indicator. Okay, maybe you can say things like, oh, because unemployment, you're only unemployed if you're willing to work, okay, able to work, and then you're looking for work but you cannot find work. Okay, that's the most simple way to think about it. Okay, so maybe you can think about things like discourage workers. Okay, this one I throw you a lot of concept lah, so if you don't remember, it's okay. Okay, so there's discouraged workers. So what is discouraged workers? It's people who have been looking for work for a very long time until they give up. So they give up already, right? It means they are no longer unemployed. By economic terms, okay, they are no longer unemployed. But then actually it doesn't mean that the economy is doing better or people have a higher material standard of living. It's just that people are giving up. Okay, so you tell me that employment as a statistics is maybe not very good. Okay. Yeah. So the third one, okay, what does your antithesis look like? Okay, antithesis is you answering the question. Okay, so you tell me the statistic insufficient in telling you non-material standard of living because there are some things that maybe you want to talk about. Health index, literacy rate. Okay, yeah, happiness index. Okay, if you attend like my other classes, we got a COVID class because it's very, okay, just a hint for y'all this year, it's very, very likely that something COVID related will come out for your year. Okay, because everyone predicted that it will come out last year, but it didn't. So it's probably going to come out for your year. Yeah, the retake year. Okay, so you think about COVID resilience scale or something. Okay, it's an actual like indicator. Okay, this kind of thing. Okay, so Sutri asked for thesis, right? If I do one material, non-material science, doesn't it matter if I do either? Oh, okay, sorry, I misinterpreted your question. Okay, your question, yes. Okay, so if you do for thesis and thesis, it doesn't matter which one is material, non-material. I thought you're asking that if let's say I have an evaluation for this point, does it mean this? Okay. Must you use preamble? Yes. Okay, because if you don't use preamble, you will fall to L2. Why is because if you look at L3, right, one of them is you must cover the entire scope suggested by the question. So if the question already suggests for you all of these points, then you must write all these points. Okay, you don't have to cover no, you can write in new points, but all the points that suggested you must write in. Okay, so for example here actually because I was rushing, but something that you must talk about is also inflation. Okay, but actually inflation, why you don't have to talk about it, right? You realize that the question got a repeat. Okay, because GDP at 2010 prices already means that inflation has been accounted for already. Okay, inflation has been accounted for, so you don't need this actually. So you can write it when you are writing your first point. Okay, yeah, just to let the examiner know that you know that GDP at real prices means inflation has been accounted for. You write that line, they know already that you know that this is not unnecessary statistics. Okay, so yes, it's a must to use a preamble. That's why the 3 command, concept and context, if they got give you. Understand, right? Any further questions? Hope this is not too confusing. Okay, so another point to take note, okay, is that your evaluation, right, is different from your thesis, antithesis. Okay, your evaluate is you must evaluate your point, evaluate your point. Okay, and then okay, so let's look at the last one, evaluation and conclusion. Okay, so evaluation and conclusion, right, you're gonna summarize all these. Okay, so how do you summarize all of these? You can say that end of this statistics, the statistics provided is good in telling us that there is an improvement instead of living. So you must answer the question, okay? Because the question asks, can it conclude? So you can say that, okay, it's good in helping, but you cannot conclude the improvement of standard of living. Why? Because you need a variety of indicators to help tell you things about material and non-material standard of living. Okay. Yeah, then maybe you can say end of the day, a lot standard of living cannot be fully covered or measured by all indicators, something like that. Okay, so that's how you want to do the evaluation. Can, right? Okay, so now we go through structure, how it looks like. I'm gonna go through writing a good essay structure in terms of introduction. Okay, so introduction, right? Something I realized is a lot of schools, right, they don't teach, but like introduction, right, if you realize all the Hwa Chong Raffles they will have a whole like lecture dedicated hoo-ha dedicated to introduction. Okay, so the reason why, right, introduction is so important, right, is because if you write an introduction very, very well, okay, it's possible that the examiner will just breeze through or skip the rest of the essay and just give you the mark. Okay, why? Is because your introduction, right, is supposed to signal to the examiner, okay, I understand the question and these are the points that I'm going to write. Okay, so if let's say your introduction is done really very well, the examiner, especially when they're marking during winter, they're very sleepy, all that lah. They see the introduction very good, they look at the rest of the essay, they made it be true. So you've got small conceptual errors, right, in the rest of your body. They may just like not see it, or or sometimes you write something that is a bit confusing. They're like, yeah, she knows what she's talking about, or he knows what he's talking about. Then they just give you the mark. Okay, that's why introduction is gonna be actually the most important part of your essay. Okay, so if you write a good introduction, then maybe they're going to breeze through everything else. They look at maybe your diagrams look correct, then they give you the mark already. Okay, but then of course for evaluation, okay, introduction is supposed to help you frame your content. Okay, so for question at 15-mark evaluation, the examiners will still go and look at all your evaluation points lah. Okay, but like yeah, having a good introduction is very important. Okay, so how do you write a good introduction? Okay, it's something to do with your 3 C's as well. Okay, so if you understand your 3 C's well, you're gonna write a good introduction. Okay, so the first step, you need to define any key economic concepts and keywords. So remember, we got the whole concept idea. Okay, so all your concepts, right, you must write in all of the key definitions in your introduction. Okay, then clarify. It means you need to dissect any unclear terms of the essay, or you need to indicate that you understand why the question is asking this. Okay, indicate you understand why this essay is asking this question. Very smoky lah, but later we'll see examples what I mean. Okay. Okay, so maybe they say that explain why inflation is the low and stable inflation is sorry, explain, okay, no, not explain, Let me think of a question offhand. Okay, discuss whether low and stable inflation or high economic growth is more important of a macroeconomic policy, something like that. Okay, then how will your clarify look like? Is you need to understand, okay, why are they asking this question? So why they're asking is because there's actually a macroeconomic conflict, okay, between having low and stable inflation and high economic growth. Because high economic growth leads to high inflation in general. Okay, so you need to clarify this kind of thing. Okay, or anything is, let's say, unclear terms. Just now, remember we got seed price, right? Okay, so does price tell me? Okay, so you can say that price is determined by demand and supply factors. Okay, so this is how you clarify also some of the terms in the essay. Okay, so you know that price is determined demand supply. Okay, something like that. We'll go through my examples later, so don't worry about clarify. Okay, last one is frame. Okay, so you need to introduce the framework and scope of your essay. Okay, so remember to get L3, one of the very important points is you must have a balance and you must have scope. So you must tell me that you know that all of these things must be covered in your essay. So maybe you say that in this essay, I will go through the demand factors such as taste and preferences and supply factors such as maybe taxes or government policy or cost of production. Okay, production cost. Yeah, that will determine the price of blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's how you go through framework. So you tell me what are the points you're going to talk about in the essay. Okay. Okay, example. Okay. In recent years, the demand for smartphones in Singapore has risen dramatically. Explain the possible causes behind this trend. Okay. Yeah, so I won't go through 3Cs, you all know. Okay. So let's see concept first. Okay, concept, you know that there is demand for smartphones. Okay, so demand for smartphones, and then you know that it has risen dramatically. Okay, they need causes. Okay, so first define what's the economic concept need to define. It's gonna be demand for smartphones. Okay, so you tell me that demand of smartphones is the different quantities of smartphones consumers are willing able to buy, blah blah blah, ceteris paribus. Okay, illustrated by downward sloping demand curve. Okay, so you define for me the key economic term that the whole essay is going to be around. Okay, so you clarify. Okay, so they say that Singapore, the demand has risen dramatically. So remember when you clarify, it means that you understand what the question is being asked. Okay, so you can say that, okay, what does a rise in demand mean? Okay, a rise in demand means that there is an increase in willingness and ability, okay? Throw in, you understand that this is the scope for Singaporeans, okay, to buy smartphone at each and every price. Okay, so how to frame? Okay, so you need to tell me, okay, the rise in demand could be due to a variety of factors such as, so in your essay, your point one, P1 is going to be increase in income. Okay, you tell me that your point one will be increase in income. Your point two will be taste and preferences. And your point three will be your population size. Okay, then you tell me this essay will explain how all these factors will lead to a increase in demand. Okay, so understand, right? Define key terms, clarify. Clarify, right? If you're very confused, it's okay. How you can practice your clarify, right? Is you go and look at model essays and look at the introduction. They always have a clarifying line. Okay, so you need, it's very hard for, every question has a different thing that you need to clarify. So if you look at a lot of practices, you look at a lot of essay, then you just practice trying to identify what is the define, what is the clarify. Okay, then you'll be able to have more, understand how to clarify in the future. Okay, but of course, go and look for good essays lah. Don't look at like Kaplan essays, then of course they will have a good introduction. Okay, yeah. Then frame, you're going to tell me what is going to be your point one, point two, and point three. So you tell me what is going to be a paragraph. Okay, do you need to write evaluative points, okay, in your introduction? No need. Okay, which is why I say that introduction is important for you to secure the 10 marks, but not necessarily the 15 marks. Okay, question? Okay, then let's move on. Discuss the factors that could lead to a sharp increase in rental prices in Singapore. Okay, so prices, remember, you need to define prices, okay, or you need to clarify what's in it. So you see in the define, right, I already say prices of good is determined by demand and supply of the good. Okay, and then I define demand refers to willingness, ability, blah, blah, blah. Supply refers to willingness, ability for producers to blah, blah, blah. Okay, Then clarify. So clarify means you need to say, I understand what the question is asking. So the question is asking that there's a factors that has led to a sharp increase. Okay, so I tell the examiner, I understand that an increase in rental prices in Singapore, okay, could be due to a increase in demand, okay, or a fall in supply. Okay, so I understand increased rental prices it's not just any factor. Okay, you know that it can be due to demand supply factor, but you know it's because there's an increase in demand and there's a fall in supply. Okay, meanwhile, a sharp increase. Okay, this one, okay, think note when you got increased demand and supply factors will tell you increase, but elasticity will tell you why the increase is sharp. Okay, a bit of basic concepts, but if you don't know, ask me after class. Yeah, so yep. So meanwhile, a sharp increase could be due to the supply of rental housing being priced inelastic. Okay, then you frame. In this essay, I'll discuss demand factors. Okay, tell me what is your point 1. Increase in population is your point 1. Then supply factors such as government policies is going to be your point 2 or paragraph 2. Okay, could lead to an increase in rental pricing. This essay will then illustrate how PS factors such as length and complexity of production have. Okay, so this is a factor for why your supply is going to be price inelastic. Okay, point 3 will lead to the increase in prices being sharp. Okay, so if you see if your essay is written, your intro written very well, the examiner will know that this is going to be a good essay already, because you know what is all your key definitions, you know what's the requirement scope of the question, and then you already tell me what's going to be the point 1, point 2, point 3. And then look at this point right there, okay, this is a correct point, this is a correct point, and this is a correct point. Then hopefully they'll neglect the rest of your essay. Okay. So I keep saying PIL 1, PIL 2, PIL 3. Okay, so what PIL is, if secondary school got take literature, you may know this. Okay, so PIL point, okay, so first is point, P stands for point. Okay, so what point means is every single paragraph, right, you need to have only one key idea. Don't talk about a mix of ideas. Okay, so some people, especially when they panic exam, no time really, they will go and merge points into one paragraph. So maybe like, let's say, instead of like demand, I will say my paragraph, right? I will say that increase in demand due to an increase in population and change in taste of preferences will lead to an increase in rental prices. Lead to an increase in rental prices in Singapore. Okay, that's wrong. Why is it wrong? It's because I bring two premises. I bring increase in population and taste and preferences. So I'm bringing 2 points into a single paragraph. Then your paragraph will be very, very messy. Okay, so don't do that. Every single paragraph should convey one key idea with one topic sentence. Okay, so it means that the idea must be conveyed in one single sentence, which you know as your topic sentence. Okay, elaborate is just basically tell me what this topic sentence means lah. Okay, exemplify. After that, you want to think whether you can use any real life example. So let's say in Singapore, okay, maybe say in Singapore, Singaporeans or Singapore, we have a lot of expats. Okay, so got a lot of people coming in from overseas. Okay, and then these people do not have home ownership in Singapore, hence they will rent houses. Okay, so it's likely that when, let's say, there's globalization, or let's say after COVID, the borders open, right? A lot of expats come to Singapore, then there'll be a surge in rental prices in Singapore because there's a significant demand in the context of Singapore. Okay, so you can say examples like, let's say in Singapore, blah, 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 blah. Okay, or you can use diagrams. Okay, so how you want to show is you want to show your demand and supply curve. Okay, so your demand got to shift significantly, something like that. Okay, or numerical examples. Very rare. Okay, last time you all need to look at theory of CA and then you must have numbers, but now it's no longer a syllabus. So the only one I can think of is maybe you can use it for exchange rates. Okay, bring in some numbers when you talk about exchange rate policy. Okay, but don't generally I'm very bad at math lah. Okay, so yeah, I will never go for numerical examples. Okay, last one is link. Okay, optional, don't have to. Okay, but it's just that maybe for some essays, discussive essays, so got discuss, right? This is antithesis, right? You may want to write a last line to link, okay? Because sometimes to make sure that the examiner doesn't get confused at your point. Or sometimes you write halfway, then you realize you write, you very sad already. Like you don't know what you're writing. Okay, sometimes you write very fast, and that will happen lah. So you a bit get confused what you're writing, right? Then the line you just throw in a link and say, therefore, which is your topic sentence, just to clarify the examiner that like, yeah, you kind of like forgot what you're saying, but then this is what you're saying. Okay, so you can, but optional if your ISA is very good, you don't have to write links. Okay, so let's look at question. Okay, recent years, the demand for smartphones have risen dramatically. Explain the possible causes in trend. Okay, so you know that demand is, you're gonna talk about demand factors. Okay, so let's talk about, in the point, you need to have one very clear demand factor. Don't bring in multiple demand factors, just one. Okay, so you just say it's due to the increase in income of Singaporeans. Elaborate. Tell me why does an increase in income of Singaporeans lead to an increase in demand for smartphones? Okay, so increase in income will lead to an increase in your purchasing power. Okay, and then given that smartphones is a luxury good, so YD more than one, increase in income will increase your demand for smartphones more than proportionately. Okay, so for H1, I don't know if any of you are H1, don't need to care about YAD. Okay, you can just tell me it's a normal goal, or you don't even have to tell me because it's not your syllabus. Okay, then next is exemplify. Okay, so exemplify, you can use examples, you use numbers, okay, use diagram. Okay, so in this case, I chose to go by examples. Okay, why is because they will give me a very clear context, which is Singapore. So I'll try to bring some Singapore thing. It will make my essay look better. Okay, compared if I just draw a demand curve. Okay, so I say that in 2023, there was a rise in median income Singaporeans by 2.8%. Okay, in exam, if you don't know all these numbers, don't have to write. You can just say that Singapore generally has a rise is experiencing a significant rise in income on a yearly basis. Okay, general knowledge. You can just say that. Okay, so with higher income levels, there's an increase in willingness and ability to buy smartphones. Okay, or you can even say things like Singapore has one of the highest median incomes in the world. Okay, so when there's an increase in income, okay, there will be a significant increase in demand for luxury goods such as smartphones, something like that. Okay. Okay. Just now go back to that question. Discuss the factors that could lead to a sharp increase in rental prices. Okay, I chose this paragraph because this paragraph is actually conceptually the hardest to explain. Okay, so remember when we say that there's an increase in rental prices, right? It can due to be an increase in demand or a fall in supply. Okay, but this paragraph will explain why is it sharp. Okay, so remember when we talk about sharp, you need to bring in because there's a certain elasticity concept. Okay, so take note, okay, this part could be confusing if your concepts are not strong yet. Okay, when there's a change in demand, okay, the elasticity concept that you bring in is PES. It's not PED. Okay, if there's a change in supply, the concept you must bring in is PED. Okay, why, right? Let's say I got a change in demand. Okay, my demand curve change. The one that influences how much the price changes, right? It's gonna be how steep, or how gentle or how steep your supply curve is. Okay, which is why when there's a change in demand, the factor that influence is gonna be PES because it's the steepness of your supply curve that will influence your price. Okay, same thing when it comes to supply. When there is a supply shift, okay, the one that's going to determine how much your price changes is going to be your PED, which is how steep or how gentle or how steep your demand curve is going to be. Demand elastic, demand elastic, supply. Okay, so you can see, yeah. Okay, just a side concept, nothing to do with the essay writing class, just for you guys to recap a bit. Okay, so yeah, discuss the factors that lead to a sharp increase. So this paragraph, right, well, I'm not going to explain this, okay, but I'm going to bring elasticity, which is why I chose this one, because it's the most difficult to write, okay? So tell me what your point is. The sharp increase in rental prices could be due to the supply of houses being price inelastic due to the, okay, tell me why is it price elastic? Complexity or length of production needed to build housing, okay? Because house very hard to build, okay? It takes a very long time, okay? This is what it's saying, okay? Then you elaborate. With an increase in demand from D0 to D1, okay, then remember, okay, because I choose exemplify, I chose diagrams. So your elaborate must tie in very closely to your diagram. Okay, so remember in L3, they got say that when you use diagrams, right, for depth explanation, it means for depth, right, there's a component that says something like your diagrams are like like fully like explain or something. Okay, so it means that your explanation must tie into your diagram almost every single line. Okay, that will make a very good diagram, a very good explanation. Okay, so with an increase in demand from D0 to D1. Okay, so when increase in demand from D0 to D1, prices of rental houses are expected to significantly increase from P0 to P1 should the supply of rental housing be priced inelastic. Okay, so you see if there's inelastic, right? You change your demand curve from D0 to D1, your prices are going to go from P0 to Pi. Okay, which is very significant. Okay, compared to if let's say the supply was inelastic, okay, there will only be a light increase in your prices from P0 to PE. Okay. Yeah, so this is how you write. Okay, so you got point, elaborate, exemplify with a diagram. So this one, it will show you how you can do it using examples. This one is to show you how to do it using diagrams. Okay, and if you were to choose to use diagram, this paragraph must be very, very closely tied with your diagram. Okay, how to know closely tied? Almost every single line you're referring to your diagram. Okay, okay. So analogy. Writing a good essay is like planting a planting a garden and not a jungle. What I mean by garden, you see the bushes very nice, right? Okay, so you got your point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5. Okay, jungle means like, wow, you're this point, go to this point, then don't know what's happening. Okay, yeah, so think of your paragraph, it must be intro, point 1, point 2, point 3. Okay, evaluation of point 1, evaluation, point 2, evaluations. Okay, must be very like clear. And then this is how you segment your paragraphs also. Okay, and you realize that when something you realize, if it's very clear, right? Your point 1, point 2, point 3, right? And you know what you're writing for each paragraph, right? Each paragraph is very short only. Okay, you can get full marks with very short paragraphs as long as you're very concise in what you're writing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Last part, we're gonna talk about how to write a good conclusion. Okay. So 10-mark question. Very simple. Okay. For conclusion, you don't need to write evaluation, nothing. Okay, just simple summary of points will be enough. Okay. For 15-mark, okay, sorry, I never changed the thing. Oh, mistake. Okay, judgment, substantiation, and insight. Okay, but personally okay, this framework, right, as long as you understand can you don't need to memorize the framework. Why? Is because your conclusion, right, is not gonna be as important as your introduction. Okay, well, because towards the end, right, as long as you show that you got a strong evaluation, they will give you the full marks. Okay, but then why there's this structure, right, is for you to practice. Okay, so when you're writing conclusion, you marking your own conclusion, right, these 3 things are going to tell you that it's a good conclusion. Okay, so first one is judgment. So what judgment means, remember I keep mentioning at the end of the paragraph, like every end of 15 marks essay, right, you must answer the question directly. So you must tell me, okay, so at the end of the day, do you agree with the thesis or do you disagree with the thesis? So you agree with the thesis more antithesis. You must give a very clear answer to the question. Okay, so this is going to be a first line of your conclusion. So do you agree or disagree? Okay, then substantiation. Okay, it's just going to be a summary of the points written in the essay or summary of the evaluations written throughout the paragraph, throughout the essays at the end of every paragraph. Okay, this is the insight part. Okay, this is important. Okay, you must bring in one concept, okay, or one idea that has not been mentioned in the question at all as your final evaluation point. So for example, okay, let me think of an example. Okay, not this one. Okay, so example will be, let's say just now we got talk about the standard of living one, right? Okay, then maybe your insight will be just that's why you need a mix of many indicators, okay, to evaluate like the non-material or material standard of living. Okay, so you can say mix of indicators, or maybe you can bring in things like, a good way to measure non-material standard of living is to bring in composite indicators. What are composite indicators? They are things like your happiness index. Okay, so it's a mix of a lot of indicators. They look at literacy, health expectancy, infant mortality, everything to mix into one. Okay, so we need to bring in one point that was not mentioned in the essay. Okay, maybe let's say for policies, let's say you talk about, oh, this policy, fiscal policy is good. But exchange rate policy is good, but interest rate policy may be better, blah 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 blah. That kind. Okay, you say your whole thing already, right? Then at the very end, you say that at the end of the day, a mix of policies is required. Or you can say it is dependent on the state of the economy. So if the economy is going through an economic boom, blah, blah, blah. If the economy is going through like recession, then blah, 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 blah. Or can say it depends on the nature of the economy. So maybe for small and open economies like Singapore, exchange rate is better. But for large economies such as US and China, then interest rate policy is better, something like that. Okay, so you must bring in something that has not been mentioned before. Okay, so let's say discuss whether the firm's strategy to increase profits come at the expense of the consumer's welfare. Okay, so you make a judgment, answer the question. Okay, so you say that it does not necessarily come at the expense. So you're telling me you disagree, okay, with the question. Okay, because they say that it always come right at the expense, right? So saying that no, it doesn't always have to be like that. Okay, so you answer no. You agree with the antithesis more. You can also say yes. Okay, it's up to you. Okay. Profit motives of firms can go hand in hand with consumer welfare. Substantiate. Tell me why you think this is the case. Okay, chances are all these points have been kind of somewhat mentioned in your essay already. Okay, so you can just summarize the points or summarize the evaluation points. Okay, so while strategies like false advertising and collusion can be detrimental, okay, will probably be your point one. Okay, so you say, wow, you acknowledge this thing. Other strategies like this will be best for society as it benefits both your consumer and producer. So these chances are this would have been your point two. Okay. Improve of technology, blah, 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 would increase. This would likely be your point three. Okay, and hence consistent intuition. Okay, so you'll just summarize the points or summarize the evaluation points as mentioned. Okay, but make sure that, of course, it has to match what your judgment is lah. Okay, so you have to acknowledge the thesis, but you say, but the antithesis is stronger. Okay, insight. Okay, but end of the day, whether the firm does help to engage in such win-win strategies such as R&D is dependent on this one. Okay, so maybe some of the firms that experience competition of its contestable threats are usually more willing. Okay, so maybe some firms will do it, but some firms wouldn't do it. Okay, yeah, so it depends. So this is your insight that was probably not mentioned in the whole essay. Okay, this one is a bit hard to understand. You can take some time after class to read through carefully yourself to see how it's made. Okay. Any questions regarding the content that we're going to go through how to study already? Questions? No? Send the thumbs up so I know. I'll fall asleep already. I cannot tell. Okay, I'll just assume that everyone is fine. If you got, okay, thanks Kovis for the thumbs up. Okay, I'll just assume everyone is fine and I hope that you're not asleep. So you got any questions regarding how to write, right? Or you want me to look at your paragraphs and stuff like that, you can just send me, can help you take a look. Okay, so most important point, how to study moving forward. Okay, general idea how to, okay, you need to plan a study schedule, okay, for econs. Okay, so how you want to plan your study schedule, right, is economics, right, has a lot of themes. Okay, so if you don't know what the themes are, right, you just go and Google, like H2 Economics Syllabus 2024. Okay, and then you see economics syllabus, then you will see that there's theme 1, theme 2, theme 3. Okay, or you can think about things as like, okay, demand and supply elasticities is gonna be a very big theme, theme 1. Okay, theme 2 will be market structure. Theme 3 will be market failure. Okay, then maybe for what's that called, macro will be things like, okay, macroeconomic growth. Okay, macroeconomic policies. Okay, so they are going to be that. Then maybe globalization. Okay, so there are going to be a few like key things. Okay, so how you want to study, right, is when you study the first topic, okay, let's say demand and supply, right, it's going to be demand, supply, elasticity. Okay, so maybe you want to see factors of demand. Okay, you want to look for essays that relate to demand and supply, and then you practice those essays. Okay, why essays is because you need to know how to apply all of these things that you're studying in an exam context. Okay, so topic 1, your essays. Then you look at topic 2, study essays. Topic 3, study essays. Okay, and then at the end of the theme, so maybe you spend 1 month studying the whole theme, right, the whole demand and supply chapter. Then you must look at essays that have okay, you must summarize. Okay, so you memorize everything, you look through everything that you studied, including all the essays, right? And then you look at real world application. So look for essays and stuff that has real world application. Okay, so for example, let's say it's like elasticity, then you want to think about okay, real world, right? What are some of the things that actually does have maybe price discrimination or does make use of these elasticity concepts? Okay, yeah, and then you look at real application, the last component is you need to have a mini graph drawing session for yourself. Okay, so you need to summarize and think about what are all of the graphs that you've learned across this entire theme. Okay, so you have a graph drawing session. Okay, then you repeat the same thing for different themes. Okay, sounds very arbitrary, right? Okay, this is actually derived from my own tuition center, the class lesson plans. Okay, but in general, this is how we plan. Okay, you can actually use these for your own self, because remember I did mention that you all should try to complete all of your content by June-July period, and then you spend the last 3-4 months doing all of the different schools prelim papers. Okay. Yeah, so how to plan, right? You see, let's say April, right? Remember I said demand and supply is going to be one of the big themes, right? So you see, week 1, I study price mechanism, demand and supply. And of course, I must look for some essays, okay, relating to that. Week 2, I study applications of demand and supply. Week 3, I study elasticities of demand, okay? And I look at all the essays relating to it. Okay, so you must go and organize and prepare your own essays lah. So then you look at application and then you need to organize a mini graph drawing session. Okay, so usually in my classes, that's what we do also. So we go through topic 1. Okay, so how we go through is like maybe topic 1, we go through content for 1 hour. Okay, then we spend 30 minutes looking through essay. And then topic 2, week 2, we look at, okay, the application demand supply content, then we spend 30 minutes look at essay. And then week 3, we do that. Okay, then at the end of it, we have something like a summary class. Okay, so because applications is usually gonna be somewhat of a summary class lah. Okay, so that's why this is gonna be a summary, and then we have a graph drawing class. So we recap all of the graphs that were drawn previously. Okay, then we do the same for May. Okay, then you see after we go through all of the different content, right? Then we have a real world application and a graph drawing class. Okay, then June we also go through the whole thing. Okay, then you see that June was very heavy. Okay, very heavy, got a lot of things. Then that's why we got 2 separate classes. Okay, one of them is for application and one of them is a summary and graph drawing. Okay, so this is how you want to kind of like plan your schedule and study. Okay, you can use this. I already sent in the group. Okay, y'all can use this generally to go and study lah. Okay, so what y'all want to do is y'all must study both a J1 topic and a J2 topic so that you got a it's more balanced, especially because you all got 1 year to sprint towards A levels. Okay, so this is how you want to study. Okay, any questions?